The courtroom went silent. A 12-year-old boy leaned back in his chair and said, "You're nothing, Judge Judy." He laughed, and loud, echoing, disrespectful. The bailiff froze. The audience gasped. And Judge Judy, she didn't flinch. She just stared. That cold, piercing stare that could stop time. 30 seconds passed. Not a word. Then she slowly picked up a file from her desk, flipped it open. "You think this is funny, young man?" she said, voice calm but razor-sharp. And what she read next changed everything. No one in that courtroom, not the bailiff, not the cameras, not even the boy, will ever forget what came after. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. The laughter still echoed when Judge Judy leaned forward, her silence louder than any gavel. Ethan, 12 years old, hoodie half-zipped, sneakers tapping against the bench, didn't flinch. He leaned back, arms crossed, a grin pulling at his lips like a challenge. His mother, seated beside him, whispered his name under her breath. Once, twice. He didn't even turn. The camera caught everything. The tilt of his chin. The smug look of a boy who thought he had already won the room. The audience murmured, the air thick with disbelief. In the far corner, the bailiff's posture stiffened. Even he could feel the temperature drop. Judge Judy didn't rush. She simply adjusted her glasses, the motion precise and slow. "You done?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "I guess." That one word, the way he said it, rolled through the room like static. His tone was sharp, dismissive, the kind that only a child too familiar with adults giving up could perfect. Judy watched him carefully. There was no anger in her eyes, only curiosity, the dangerous kind. "You guess?" she repeated. "You guess you're done?" Ethan blinked. "You heard me." His mother reached over, whispering, "Ethan, stop it." Her voice cracked, the sound of someone holding back years of frustration and fear. He pulled his arm away. "So you said I could speak, so I'm speaking." Judy nodded once, leaning back in her chair. "By all means, speak. Tell me why you think disrespect earns you power." That made him pause, just for a moment. Then he smirked again, trying to cover the flicker of uncertainty that passed through his eyes. "Because people like you think you can control everyone." The audience gasped softly. The bailiff took a half-step forward. Judy raised a hand, a gesture that meant, "Let him finish." "You think you're better than my mom," Ethan continued, "but you don't even know us." The room went still. His words weren't loud, but they landed like stones dropped into deep water. Judy exhaled slowly, eyes never leaving his face. "You're right," she said evenly. "I don't know you, but I'm about to." She reached for the file in front of her, a thick folder marked Turner vs. Turner, and set it in the center of her desk. The sound it made was deliberate, final. Ethan's smirk faltered. His mother looked down, tears already threatening to break. "Ethan," Judy said softly, almost kindly, "you called me nothing. That's fine. But inside this folder," she tapped it once with her finger, "are pages written by people who know you better than anyone else." Ethan frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Judy replied, opening the file slowly, "that before you laugh at this court again, you might want to know what the truth says about you." The camera zooms in on the folder, beige, heavy, and waiting. Judge Judy looks up, eyes narrowing. "Let's talk about what's in here." The sound of paper rustling cut through the silence like thunder. Every eye in the courtroom followed Judge Judy's hands as she turned the first page of the thick beige folder. Ethan tried to look bored, but his heel tapped against the floor, a quiet rhythm that betrayed the storm brewing beneath his smirk. Judy's voice was calm, steady, surgical. "This file isn't about stolen property," she said. "It's about a custody dispute and a pattern." The boy's eyes narrowed. His mother swallowed hard. "Your mother brought this case because she believes your behavior has crossed into something dangerous. And she doesn't mean the usual mischief, does she, Mrs. Turner?" The woman shook her head. "No, Your Honor." Her voice was trembling now, fragile. "He's not the same boy he was before his father left." Ethan groaned. "Oh, here we go again." But Judy didn't react. She flipped another page, her expression unreadable. "Let's see. 3 school suspensions in the last 2 months. 1 for verbal aggression, 1 for vandalism, 1 for walking out during a teacher's instructions." Ethan looked away, jaw tightening. "Those teachers hate me. And why would that be? Judy asked softly. Because they take her side. He pointed at his mother. The defiance in his voice cracked around the edges. She acts like I'm the problem when she's the one who made Dad leave. A hush fell over the room. The audience didn't dare breathe. Mrs. Turner's face broke, tears sliding silently as she shook her head. Ethan, please. Judy leaned forward slightly. You think she made him leave? Ethan crossed his arms. He said he was tired of her controlling everything. I heard them fighting. Judy closed the folder for a moment, letting the weight of his words hang. You heard two grown people at war and thought one of them needed to win, she said. That's how children turn pain into pride. Ethan blinked. You don't know anything about me. The judge tilted her head. Not yet. She opened the file again. But these reports, from your counselor, your principal, even your neighbors, paint a picture. Not of a bad kid, but of one who thinks disrespect keeps him safe. His lip quivered, but he hid it fast. They don't know me either. Maybe not, Judy said quietly. But they're trying to. His mother reached out again, voice breaking. I didn't bring you here to embarrass you, Ethan. I just wanted you to hear the truth from someone who wouldn't give up on you. The boy looked at her for the first time since court began. His eyes were glassy, confused. You think this is helping? Judy's tone shifted, gentle but heavy. She's not trying to help you win, Ethan. She's trying to help you stop losing yourself. For a moment, even the cameras seemed to stop humming. Judge Judy placed her hand flat on the file. You think you're the victim here. You're about to see what real consequence looks like. Your Honor, I don't know what else to do. Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling through the microphone. The courtroom had grown still, the kind of silence that seemed to listen. Mrs. Turner clutched her hands together, as if holding on to the last thread of control. Judge Judy didn't speak. She just let the woman's words settle in the air, letting the silence do the judging. I've tried everything, Mrs. Turner continued, her breath uneven. Therapy, teachers, discipline, talking, silence, nothing works. He doesn't hear me anymore. Ethan's chair creaked as he leaned back, his face turned away. That's because you don't listen either. The words hit her like a slap. She froze, lips parting slightly, eyes wet but sharp with exhaustion. I listen to everything, Ethan, she whispered. But all I hear from you is hate. The audience shifted, the wooden benches creaking like restless ghosts. Judge Judy's gaze flicked between them, mother and son locked in a quiet war of pain. Mrs. Turner, Judy said softly, why bring your son here instead of another counselor, another session? The woman exhaled a shaky breath. Because he respects no one, not even me. But maybe, her voice faltered, maybe he'll respect you. Judy's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, then returned to her steady, precise calm. Respect isn't borrowed, ma'am. It's earned. And sometimes taught the hard way. She turned toward Ethan. You hear that? He didn't answer. His fingers drummed against the desk faster this time. Why are you angry, Ethan? She asked. His shoulders rose and fell. Because everyone acts like I'm broken. Like I'm some project to fix. Judy's voice stayed calm. Maybe they see pain you don't. I'm fine. He snapped too loud. His voice cracked halfway through the word. His mother winced. The audience murmured again, but Judy raised a hand and the room obeyed. Ethan, she said evenly, your mother didn't bring you here to shame you. She brought you here to save you, he scoffed. She doesn't care. She just wants everyone to think she's a good mom. Mrs. Turner broke then. No more composure, no more restraint. Her tears fell freely. I am trying to be a good mom. Her voice rose, not in anger, but desperation. Do you think I like watching you hate me? Watching you become someone who laughs at a judge just because you can? Ethan looked away, jaw tightening. His chest rose faster now, breathing uneven. Judge Judy's tone dropped lower, deliberate. He's not hearing you, Mrs. Turner. He's hearing himself in you. The anger, the abandonment, they speak the same language. The mother blinked, confused. What do you mean? Judy leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on the boy. He blames you because he misses his father, and every time he looks at you, he sees what left. Mrs. Turner's sob broke the silence. He left because of her. Ethan muttered suddenly, his voice small but sharp enough to pierce the quiet. The audience gasped. Judge Judy's expression hardened. Say that again, young man. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened like a blade. Say that again, young man." Ethan hesitated, the smirk gone, replaced by something raw, fear mixed with defiance. His voice trembled as he spoke. He left because of her. The room inhaled collectively, the air heavy enough to press against the walls. His mother's breath caught. "Ethan, please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Don't do this." But he did not stop. "You made him leave, Mom. I heard you say it. You told Aunt Kelly that he could go rot somewhere else. You said he was weak." His small hands clenched into fists. "You made him sick." A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the cameras seemed to pull closer. Judge Judy didn't move. Her tone when it came was slow and cold. "Ethan, where did you hear that?" "At home, before Dad left. I heard her crying and yelling on the phone. She said she wished he would stop pretending to be sick just to get attention." Mrs. Turner's face went white. Her eyes darted toward Judy, pleading. "That's not what I meant. It was one argument. He had a heart condition, but he wasn't taking care of himself." Judy raised a hand gently. "No justifications right now. Let's stay with what was heard, not what was meant." She turned to Ethan. "What else do you remember?" Ethan hesitated, swallowing hard. "He said he'd write me a letter before he left. I never saw it. She said it got lost." Something flickered across Judy's face. A micro-expression, there and gone. She reached for the file again, her movements deliberate, surgical. "Mrs. Turner," she said softly, "was there a letter from your husband in this file?" The woman froze. For a heartbeat, she didn't breathe. Then she whispered, "Yes." The word felt like a confession. Ethan's head snapped toward her. "You said there wasn't." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I was trying to protect you, Ethan. He wrote things that would only confuse you." "Confuse me?" Ethan's voice cracked, the anger breaking into disbelief. "How you lied to me about my own dad." Judy unfolded her glasses and leaned forward, eyes locked on the mother. "Mrs. Turner, I want that letter. Right now." The mother's hands trembled as she reached into her purse. A folded, worn envelope appeared. Edges soft, ink faded with time. She placed it on the desk like evidence too heavy to carry. Judy lifted it carefully, scanning the first few lines in silence. Then she looked up, her expression unreadable. "You were right, Ethan. He did write to you." The boy's breath hitched. "What does it say?" Judy's eyes lowered to the page again. Her voice was quiet, but every word sliced through the tension. "It says, 'If anything happens to me, tell Ethan the truth about his mother.'" The courtroom froze. The only sound was the soft hum of the ceiling lights, trembling like the truth finally learning how to breathe. Judge Judy folded the letter slowly, her tone colder now. "And I think it's time we all found out what that truth really is." The letter trembled in Judge Judy's hand as she began to read aloud. The courtroom leaned forward. Even the air felt closer, pressed between truth and dread. Ethan's eyes darted between the judge and his mother, searching for a clue, a lie, an escape. But Mrs. Turner sat motionless, her fingers gripping the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. Judy's voice was calm, each word carved from precision. "My dear Ethan," she began, "if you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep my promise. I wanted to be there for every birthday, every game, every mistake, but life had other plans, and pride had a price." The boy's face twisted. "Pride," he whispered. Judy's eyes lifted briefly before continuing. "Your mother and I fought too much. We both said things that can't be unsaid. But she is not your enemy. I was angry, and in my anger, I blamed her for things that were mine to fix. If she ever hides this letter from you, it's because she's scared, wait, not cruel." A tear slid down Mrs. Turner's cheek, slow and unhidden. "I loved you, Ethan. You were my reason to keep going. Don't let anger be yours." Judy stopped reading. She placed the paper on the desk, smoothing it gently with her palm. "There's more," she said softly, "but that's the part that matters right now." Ethan shook his head. "He said she wasn't my enemy, but he also said to tell me the truth about her." "What truth?" Mrs. Turner's voice came out in fragments. "Your father, he wasn't perfect. We both made mistakes. I thought keeping things quiet would protect you." "Protect me?" Ethan snapped. "You lied to me. You made me hate him." Judy's voice cut through his. Enough. It wasn't loud, but it was absolute. You're angry because you finally see what truth costs, but anger is only power until it burns you. He glared at her, eyes wet but defiant. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Judy said. I've seen people hide behind pride until it buries them, and I've seen children like you pay the price for their silence. Mrs. Turner broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. I didn't mean for him to find out like this, she whispered. That letter, it wasn't supposed to be read in public. Then maybe, Judy replied quietly, it should have been read years ago, when it could have healed instead of haunted. The courtroom was silent again. Even the cameras seemed hesitant to move. Ethan's eyes softened, confusion replacing fury. So he forgave her? He asked. Judy nodded. Maybe he did, but forgiveness isn't a gift you receive. It's something you earn. She folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the folder. Her hand lingered on it, a gesture not of judgment but of weight. Judge Judy's gaze rose, steady and sharp. You didn't just lie to him, Mrs. Turner, she said. You lied to yourself. Ethan's silence felt heavier than his laughter ever did. He sat there, small, trembling, staring at nothing. The boy who had once rolled his eyes at the judge now couldn't even lift his head. His mother's crying filled the space where his mockery used to live. Judge Judy leaned forward, hands clasped. Her voice was low, unhurried, but it carried through every corner of the room. Ethan, she said, the truth hurts, that's its job, but what you do with it, that's what defines you. He didn't answer. His throat worked like he wanted to speak, but the words stayed trapped somewhere between pride and pain. His sneakers squeaked softly against the floor as he shifted, trying to look composed, failing miserably. Mrs. Turner reached for him, her fingers shaking. Ethan, honey, I never wanted you to hate him. I didn't know how to tell you what happened without making you hate me. He looked at her then, really looked. For a second, something human, scared and young, flickered in his eyes. You should have told me anyway, he whispered. The judge nodded slightly. He's right. Children can survive disappointment. They can survive truth, but they don't survive lies. Not from the people they're supposed to trust. The mother's sob broke again, raw and uncontrolled. I thought I was protecting him, she repeated, voice breaking like glass. Judy's tone softened. You were protecting yourself, there's a difference. The bailiff's eyes darted between them. Even he seemed unsure whether to breathe. The cameras panned in slowly, capturing the smallest movements, the trembling of Ethan's hand, the way Judy's expression stayed calm but sad. Mrs. Turner, Judy continued, you say you've tried everything, but have you tried telling him the truth about why you're really afraid? The woman froze. Judy's gaze was steady. You're afraid of losing control. You confuse obedience with love. You think if your son respects you, he'll stay, but respect isn't built on fear. Mrs. Turner wiped her face with the back of her hand. I don't want him to leave me, too. Ethan's lips parted, the weight of her words hitting harder than any lecture could. Then stop making me want to, he said softly. For a long time no one spoke. The air buzzed with emotion so thick it almost hummed. Even the usual creak of courtroom benches had gone still. Judge Judy broke the silence. This isn't about right or wrong anymore, she said. It's about repair. You can't fix broken respect by shouting louder. Ethan wiped his face quickly, embarrassed by his own tears. You don't know what she did, he muttered. The judge's brow furrowed slightly. What do you mean? By that, his voice dropped to a whisper, almost swallowed by the tension in the air. You don't know everything about what happened to my dad. The audience exchanged glances. A collective breath held tight. If you were sitting in that courtroom, would you call this discipline or heartbreak? Judge Judy leaned back, her eyes narrowing just slightly. Then tell us, Ethan, she said. What did she do? What did she do, Ethan? Judge Judy's voice was calm, but the air turned sharp, as if the room itself was waiting for the truth to land. Ethan looked down at his hands. His fingers twisted together, knuckles pale. The confident smirk that once owned the courtroom was gone, replaced by something brittle. A boy trying not to break. She lied, he said finally, voice shaking. She lied about the money, Mrs. Turner's head snapped up. "Ethan, stop!" Judy raised her hand. "Let him speak," he swallowed hard. "Dad wasn't working when he got sick. He needed surgery. I heard them talking about the bills. He said he had a fund, something he'd saved from his insurance." His voice cracked on the word fund. "But she told me the money was gone, that he'd wasted it." The audience shifted, a low murmur rising like wind before a storm. "Mrs. Turner," Judy said slowly, "is that true?" The woman hesitated too long. Her eyes darted to her son, then down to the desk. "It's complicated." "No," Judy said, the softness gone from her tone. "It's not." Tears welled in Mrs. Turner's eyes. "The money wasn't wasted," she whispered. "It was transferred to my account. I was supposed to pay the hospital." Ethan's head snapped up. "Supposed to?" "I needed time," she said, voice trembling. "He wouldn't stop arguing with me about how it should be handled. He wanted a private clinic, but I thought he was exaggerating his symptoms again. I just wanted him to calm down before we spent everything we had." The courtroom froze. The bailiff looked toward Judy, waiting. The audience held their breath. Judge Judy leaned back, her voice low, deliberate. "And what happened after you waited?" Mrs. Turner's eyes filled. "He collapsed 2 days later." Ethan's face went pale. "You mean he—" She nodded weakly. "He died before the hospital could admit him." The sound that escaped Ethan's throat wasn't anger anymore. It was disbelief, sharp and hollow. "You let him die?" Mrs. Turner's sob shook the room. "I didn't know. I thought he'd be fine. So I didn't mean for—" "Stop." Judy's voice sliced through the chaos. "You don't get to finish that sentence." "Not here." Silence. Heavy, punishing silence. Judy's tone softened, but her eyes remained fierce. "You weren't protecting your son, Mrs. Turner. You were protecting your guilt." The mother covered her face, trembling. Ethan stared at her as though seeing a stranger. Judge Judy reached for the folder again. "Mrs. Turner," she said quietly, "this case just stopped being about discipline. It's about accountability." She nodded to her clerk. "Verify the hospital records and the transaction history on this file. Now." The clerk disappeared through the side door, heels clicking like the ticking of a clock counting down. No one moved. Ethan's breaths came fast, uneven. Moments later, the clerk returned, pale, holding a printout. She handed it to Judy, whispering something under her breath. Judy scanned it, then looked up slowly. "The funds were withdrawn," she said. "The hospital never received payment." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Judy's voice dropped to a chilling calm. "This changes everything." The gavel hit once, sharp, final, echoing like thunder in a church. "Order," Judge Judy said quietly, but her voice didn't carry anger. It carried gravity. Ethan sat frozen, eyes glassy and wide. His mother trembled beside him, the tissue in her hand already shredded from nervous tears. The courtroom had gone so still that even the hum of the cameras seemed to hesitate. Judge Judy placed the hospital record and bank statement on the bench. "The documentation confirms it," she said evenly. "The funds were withdrawn from your husband's account, Mrs. Turner. The hospital never saw a cent." Mrs. Turner's lip quivered. "I didn't mean—" "Don't—" Judy's voice was calm but absolute. "We've heard enough of what you meant. Let's deal with what you did." The mother's words broke apart before they reached her lips. She collapsed forward, elbows on her knees, shaking with quiet sobs. Ethan didn't move. He stared at her like she was a puzzle he didn't want to solve. His voice came out small but sharp. "You said we didn't have money. You made me hate him for that." Mrs. Turner's sobs turned into silent convulsions. "I was trying to fix things, Ethan. I was scared. I didn't think—" "Stop saying that!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "You didn't think, you didn't listen, you didn't tell the truth." The outburst cut through the courtroom like lightning. The bailiff shifted slightly, but Judy gestured for him to stay back. "Ethan," she said softly, "sit down." He obeyed, for the first time all day. His anger dissolved into tears he didn't want to show. Judge Judy's tone changed, quieter, heavier, each word measured. "Your father died believing the money would save him. Your mother decided she knew better. That decision cost him his life, and it's been costing you both ever since." The words sank in like stones. Mrs. Turner wiped her face, unable to meet her son's eyes. "I can't take it back," she whispered. "No," Judy replied. "But you can stop running from it." The judge stood up. The cameras caught her full height, a silhouette of composure against the harsh light above the bench. "Mrs. Turner, you've turned your grief into control. You've buried your guilt under discipline. And Ethan," she looked down at the boy whose face was streaked with tears, "you've turned your pain into rebellion. Neither of you has been honest with each other or yourselves." She reached for the gavel again but didn't strike it. Instead, her hand rested beside it, steady and deliberate. "This court isn't here to punish either of you. It's here to make you see what your silence has done." Ethan looked up. His voice was barely audible. "What happens now?" Judy exhaled slowly. "Now we stop the cameras." A ripple of confusion spread through the room. The audience whispered. The bailiff frowned. Judy turned toward the crew. "This isn't for the show," she said. "This is for the boy." As the red lights on the cameras blinked off one by one, Judge Judy looked back at Ethan. "I'm calling a private recess," she said, "because there's something I need to tell you, alone." The courtroom doors clicked shut behind the last camera operator. The sudden quiet was deafening. The buzz of the lights above hummed like a nervous heartbeat. Only 3 people remained: Judge Judy, Ethan, and the bailiff, who stood respectfully near the back, still as a shadow. Judy removed her glasses, setting them gently beside the file. Her eyes softened, lines of authority folding into something closer to empathy. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I've been doing this a long time. I've seen liars, manipulators, and people who come here for a spectacle. But you," she paused, "you came here carrying pain you don't understand yet." Ethan stared at the floor, knees bouncing restlessly. "I shouldn't have yelled," he muttered. "I shouldn't have laughed." "No," Judy said, "you shouldn't have." "But I know why you did," he frowned. "Why?" "Because anger's easier than grief," she said. "Because it feels like control when everything else feels gone." For a moment he said nothing. Then softly, "If my dad was right about her, then I've been wrong about everything." Judy leaned back, folding her hands. "Maybe. Or maybe you've just been wrong about what forgiveness looks like." He looked up. His eyes were red, raw. "Forgiveness?" "She lied about his money. He's dead because of her." Judy's voice didn't rise. It never needed to. "And yet," she said, "here you are, still letting her choices decide who you become. Every time you disrespect someone, every time you lash out, you're not punishing her, Ethan. You're punishing yourself." He blinked, confusion mixing with shame. "But what else am I supposed to do?" "Feel it," she said softly. "The pain, the loss, the unfairness. Feel all of it without letting it turn into hate. That's how you start growing instead of rotting." Ethan swallowed hard. His lip trembled. "He said he'd write me more letters," he whispered. "She said he didn't." Judy looked toward the file on her desk. Her fingers brushed over it lightly. "Sometimes," she said, "the truth waits for the right moment to be heard." He tilted his head. "What do you mean?" She opened the folder again, slowly, as if unsealing time itself, and pulled out one final page. It was thinner than the rest, folded neatly, sealed in a smaller envelope. "Your father left something else," she said. It was tucked inside the same file. "I wasn't sure if I should read it yet." Ethan's eyes widened. "There's more?" Judy nodded. "The clerk found it this morning when organizing the documents. It's addressed to you, but he marked it for when the truth finally reaches him." Ethan's fingers trembled as he reached for the envelope, but Judy stopped him gently. "Not yet. You're not reading it angry," she said. "You're reading it ready." He nodded slowly, understanding without words. Judy's tone softened even more. "Do you think remorse should ever erase guilt? Or does justice demand truth no matter what?" He hesitated. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe both." Judy smiled faintly, just a hint of light through all the gray. "Do you think remorse should ever erase guilt? Or does justice demand truth no matter what?" Judy slid the final envelope toward him. "There's one last thing you deserve to see," she said. "And it might change how you remember everything." The room was so still that even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to hush itself. Ethan's fingers brushed the edge of the envelope. Its paper yellowed at the corners, soft from years of being handled but never opened. Judge Judy watched him quietly, her expression unreadable, part judge, part witness, part silent guardian. He hesitated. "What if it says something I don't want to know?" Judy's voice was calm, almost tender. "Then it's already told you something you need to." Ethan tore the envelope open with shaking hands. The sound, that faint rip, echoed like thunder in the small, empty courtroom. He unfolded the single page inside. His lips moved as he read, but the words refused to leave his mouth. Judy leaned forward slightly. "You can read it out loud if you want." He nodded, breath trembling. "Ethan," he began, his voice breaking on the first word, "if you're reading this, it means your mum couldn't stop blaming herself or me. I hope by now you've learned that anger is the one inheritance that destroys the heir." He paused, eyes flooding. "I don't want you to carry what I carried. Not the bitterness, not the fear. Your mother loved us in her own broken way. Don't make her mistakes your own." Judy swallowed hard, the faintest flicker of emotion crossing her face. "I forgive her," Ethan read softly, "and I hope one day you will too. The world doesn't need another person proving they were right. It needs someone brave enough to be kind first." His voice cracked. The paper shook in his hand. He forgave her?" Judy nodded slowly. "That's what he wanted you to see, Ethan. That forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom." He stared down at the page as a single tear slid off his chin, landing on the ink. The wet spot spread, smudging the words "forgive her" into something almost unreadable. He pressed his hand over it, as if trying to hold the words in place. Outside the door, faint sounds of murmuring leaked in. Producers, staff, the outside world waiting for the show to resume. But inside, time stood still. "I hated her," Ethan whispered, voice trembling, "every day since he left. And he just forgave her." "Sometimes love sounds like that," Judy said. "Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, even when it's undeserved." Through the small window in the courtroom door, Mrs. Turner's face appeared. She had been waiting outside, but now she could hear. Her hand covered her mouth as tears streamed silently down. Ethan's eyes flicked toward her reflection in the glass. He didn't move. He didn't speak. "Do I have to forgive her too?" he asked finally, his voice raw. Judy met his gaze, calm, unwavering. "You don't have to," she said. "But if you don't, her mistake will own you forever." He nodded slowly, the letter still trembling in his grip. Ethan looked back toward the door, eyes wet and uncertain. "But how do I forgive someone," he whispered, "who never said sorry?" When the courtroom doors opened again, the air felt colder, as if the truth itself had lowered the temperature. The audience was gone. Only the cameras, the clerk, and the weight of confession remained. Judge Judy re-entered with quiet steps, holding Ethan's letter as though it were evidence of both crime and mercy. Mrs. Turner stood near the bench, her hands clasped, eyes swollen from crying. She didn't look at her son. She couldn't. Judy placed the letter down carefully, its edges still damp from Ethan's tears. "Mrs. Turner," she said, her tone measured, "your husband forgave you. The question now is, can you face what that forgiveness costs?" The woman swallowed hard. I don't deserve it." Judy's voice didn't soften. "That's not the question. Forgiveness doesn't erase truth. It forces you to stand in front of it and not run anymore." Ethan sat motionless at the table, the letter folded neatly in front of him like a fragile secret. He didn't speak, but his silence said everything. "Ethan," Judy said gently, "I'm giving your mother the floor. You don't have to look at her, but you will listen." He nodded without raising his eyes. Mrs. Turner's breath trembled. "I know you hate me," she began, her voice uneven, small. "And maybe you should. I've lied. I've hidden things, and I've used my pain like a shield. But I never stopped loving you." Her voice cracked on the word loving. "I wanted to keep the world from breaking you, but I ended up being the one who did." Ethan's jaw tightened. He whispered, "Then why didn't you just tell me the truth?" She looked at him then, the first real eye contact in what felt like years. "Because I didn't want you to see who I really was." Judy's tone cut through softly, like a scalpel through fog. "And who is that, Mrs. Turner?" The mother hesitated, then said, "Someone who's been lying to herself even longer than she lied to him." The room was still. Judy's eyes narrowed slightly. "There's something else, isn't there?" Mrs. Turner's composure cracked. She took a shaky step forward, voice trembling like glass about to shatter. "You all think my husband left me. But that's not what happened." Judy's brow furrowed. "Then tell the truth now." The words poured out like floodwater breaking through. "He didn't leave. I pushed him away." Her voice broke completely. "I made him miss his surgery. I told him to leave the house that night. I thought if he went without treatment, Maybe he'd finally realize how much he needed me. But he never came back. Ethan froze. His mouth fell open, the blood draining from his face. Mrs. Turner fell to her knees. "It was my fault," she sobbed. "He didn't leave us. I sent him away to teach him a lesson, and he died." The judge closed her eyes, absorbing the confession with a deep, pained sigh. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, suffocating, holy. When Judy opened her eyes again, they glistened under the courtroom light. "So," she said quietly, "the truth your husband wanted Ethan to know was never about money. It was about you." "I was the one who made him miss his surgery," Mrs. Turner whispered. Her voice wavered, each syllable a confession she'd buried for years. The room didn't move. Not even the bailiff dared to shift his weight. Judge Judy's eyes stayed fixed on her, not with anger, but with a quiet, devastating steadiness. Mrs. Turner's shoulders trembled. "He wanted to go that morning. The doctor called to confirm the time. But I told him not to. I said he was being dramatic, that he was trying to make me feel guilty for leaving the argument unfinished." Her breath hitched. "He begged me to drive him, and I told him to take a cab if it was that important." The words came like a flood she could no longer hold back. He left angry. "He never made it. They found him in the parking lot. He collapsed before he reached the front doors." Ethan's small voice cracked the silence. You let him die?" The mother broke. "I didn't mean to," she cried, her words collapsing under the weight of her grief. "I thought he'd call me, that he'd turn around, that we'd fight again and fix it later. I didn't think later wouldn't come." Tears blurred Ethan's eyes until the world became a smear of color, the wood grain of the bench, the gray in Judy's hair, the shaking outline of his mother on her knees. Judy leaned forward slightly, her voice steady but stripped of its usual edge. "You were angry, and you weaponized pride," she said. "That's what killed him, Mrs. Turner. Not your words, not your silence, but your belief that being right mattered more than being kind." Mrs. Turner pressed her palms to her face. "I can't live with this." "Yes, you can," Judy said sharply, "and you will. Because running from it is what got you here in the first place." The mother sobbed harder, body folding into itself. Ethan couldn't look away. His voice trembled, small but piercing. "You lied to me my whole life, just so you wouldn't have to look at yourself." Mrs. Turner reached for him, but he flinched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I wake up every night hearing his voice. I thought if I made you respect me, maybe I could earn back what I lost." Judy exhaled softly, the sound almost a sigh. "Respect built on guilt is a house without walls," she said. "It looks strong until the wind shows up." The courtroom seemed to breathe again, just once, a single collective inhale. Ethan's tears fell freely now. He turned away, whispering to himself, "I wish Dad had written one more letter." Judy's eyes softened. "Maybe he did," she said quietly. "Maybe this is it, not on paper, but in what's happening right now." The mother looked up at the judge, eyes red, voice barely audible. "What do I do now?" Judy's gaze held hers, cold and kind at once. "Now, Mrs. Turner," she said, "you answer to yourself." The judge rose slowly, lifting the gavel. "And when you do," she added, her voice like thunder wrapped in silk, "you'll find that justice doesn't always come from me. Sometimes. It comes from the mirror. The gavel struck once is not in anger, but in judgment that felt almost sacred." The sound rolled through the courtroom like a heartbeat, slow, final, unmistakable. Judge Judy stood tall behind her bench. The authority in her presence wasn't fire anymore. It was steel, cooled by truth. "We have heard enough," she said. "This case isn't about custody or defiance or money. It's about what happens when love turns into pride and pride turns into punishment." Ethan sat motionless, his hands folded in his lap. His mother, still trembling, dared to lift her eyes to meet his, but he couldn't look back. Judy continued, her tone calm but unyielding. "Mrs. Turner, the law cannot prosecute guilt that exists only in the heart, but the court of consequence is relentless. You took your husband's life not by violence but by silence, and you've been serving your sentence ever since." The mother nodded, tears spilling freely. "I accept that," she whispered. "Good," Judy said, her eyes flicking toward Ethan, "because now you're going to start repairing the damage you left behind." Ethan looked up. "How?" Judy leaned forward slightly. "You're both going to counseling, mandatory every week. And before this case is closed, You, Mrs. Turner, will make a public apology. Not on this show, not for the cameras, but to your son. In writing. On record, the mother's voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor. Judy turned her gaze toward Ethan. Her tone softened. And you will listen. You don't have to forgive her today, but you will not let your anger define who you become. Do you understand me? He nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. The judge gave a single approving nod. Then for a moment her composure faltered, just enough to let compassion slip through the cracks of her authority. Ethan, she said quietly, I see a lot of children in this courtroom trying to be louder than their pain. You don't have to be one of them. He blinked, trying to hold back fresh tears. I just miss him, he whispered. Judy's voice softened to a whisper. Then honor him, not by hating what's left of him, but by being better than what broke him. The mother covered her face, sobbing quietly. The bailiff looked away, pretending to adjust his uniform, his jaw tight. Even the cameras, though back on, seemed hesitant to move, as if filming something too human to frame. Judy picked up her gavel again. Let this moment stand, she said, as proof that justice isn't only about punishment, it's about truth. She glanced between the mother and the son, one shattered by regret, the other rebuilding from the debris. What happened in this family is irreversible, she said, but what comes next is a choice. Her tone dropped, lower, almost reverent. So here's my verdict. She struck the gavel once more, crisp echoing through every wall. As the sound faded, Judy leaned back and whispered to herself, barely audible, Justice isn't about winning. It's about waking up. The courtroom emptied slowly, footsteps echoing like fading memories. The audience had gone quiet long ago. Even the producers whispered as they packed up their gear. The cameras panned one last time across the bench, where truth had stripped pride bare. Ethan remained seated, his small hands clasped in front of him, eyes fixed on the empty judge's chair. The room felt larger now, as though honesty had created space where resentment used to live. Mrs. Turner stood a few feet away, clutching her purse like it could shield her from what lingered between them. Her makeup had run, her posture small. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words trembled and vanished before they reached him. Judy returned quietly through the side door, no cameras trailing her this time. Her robe moved like a shadow through the light, dignified yet weary. She paused near Ethan. Still here? She asked softly. He nodded without looking up. It feels weird to leave, he said. Like if I walk out, it'll all start hurting again. Judy gave a faint smile. That's what healing feels like at first. Strange. Because it doesn't erase the pain, it just lets you see it without drowning in it. Mrs. Turner finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know if he'll ever forgive me. Judy turned toward her. Then don't ask him to. Earn it? The mother's lip quivered. How? By telling the truth, Judy said simply. Every time. Especially when it's hardest. For a moment, the three stood in a fragile triangle. Judge, mother, and son, suspended in a silence that wasn't hostile anymore, only tired. Ethan finally turned to his mother. His eyes were red but no longer angry. I don't hate you, he said quietly. But I don't know how to love you right now either. Mrs. Turner nodded, her breath shaking. Then we start from there. The judge glanced toward the file still open on her desk. Pages of testimony and tears lay scattered like debris after a storm. She closed it slowly, the soft thud echoing like the sound of a door that wasn't locked, just waiting to be opened again when they were ready. As the bailiff dimmed the lights, Judy looked at the boy one last time. So you showed courage today, Ethan, she said. Not because you spoke loudly, but because you finally listened. He met her eyes for the first time with something close to peace. Thank you, he whispered. She smiled, a small, weary smile that came from years of watching arrogance crumble into truth. Don't thank me, she said. Thank the truth. It's what set you free. Ethan stood, his mother beside him. They walked toward the exit, not side by side yet, but closer than before. The gavel sat still on the bench, glinting faintly under the last beam of light. Before you hear the verdict, ask yourself, can anyone truly change, or do we just get better at hiding who we are? As Judy watched them leave, she whispered under her breath, Case closed, but lesson ongoing. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the courtroom windows, golden, forgiving, alive. Dust motes danced lazily in the beams. the kind of quiet beauty only found after a storm. The room stood empty except for Judge Judy, seated alone at her bench. No cameras, no audience, just reflection. The gavel sat before her, still and silent. She touched it gently, her fingertips resting on the smooth wood. "Justice," she murmured, "isn't the sound of a gavel. It's the silence that follows when truth finally lands." A knock echoed at the door. The bailiff peeked in, his usually firm tone softened. "Your Honor?" "The Turners are here," Judy nodded once. "Send them in." The door creaked open and Ethan stepped in with his mother beside him. There was no tension now, only the fragile caution of two people learning to share the same air again. He wore a clean shirt. She clutched an envelope. "Good morning," Judy said. Ethan managed a faint smile. "Hi, Judge." Mrs. Turner's voice was steadier this time. "I finished what you asked." She handed over the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, every line marked by humility and ink smudged from tears. Judy unfolded it, reading silently. The letter wasn't long, but it was honest. A mother admitting to pride, to guilt, to fear. A woman telling her son that she would never again confuse control with love. When Judy looked up, her eyes glistened. "This," she said softly, "is what truth looks like when it finally finds its way home." Ethan turned toward his mother. "It's okay," he whispered. "I don't forgive you yet." "But I want to." Mrs. Turner's lips trembled as she reached for his hand. This time he didn't pull away. The judge exhaled, a long, slow breath of quiet satisfaction. "That," she said, "is what justice feels like, not the punishment." The pause, she stood, robe moving with quiet authority. "I've spent decades in this chair, watching people chase victory like it's peace. But peace doesn't roar. It doesn't argue. It just waits for the truth to catch up." Ethan looked up at her, curiosity flickering. "Do you ever get tired of doing this?" Judy smiled faintly. "Every day. But then a case like this reminds me why I started. Because sometimes justice isn't about laws. It's about moments like this one." The bailiff stood at ease by the door, eyes glistening just enough to betray his professionalism. Judy raised her gavel one final time. The sound when it struck was softer than before. Not thunder, not punishment, just closure. "Case closed," she said. "Family open." The mother and son turned to leave. As the door swung shut behind them, Judy's voice lingered. Not for them, but for everyone who would one day watch this moment and see themselves in it. "Disrespect," she said quietly, "is just pain wearing pride as armor. And the hardest battles aren't fought in court, they're fought inside the heart." She looked toward the empty seats, her final words carrying through the quiet. Because in the end, arrogance always collapses under truth.